Terrence wrote this in a statement. Whoever's like using flint and steel, can you chill for a second? Terrence wrote this in a statement. Whoever's like using flint and steel, can you chill for a second? Terrence wrote this in a statement. Whoever's like using flint and steel, can you chill for a second?
I call the session to order at 7:01 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Would anyone like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, Senator Walsh, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
You know, I love being volunteered for things. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We will now move on. Thank you. We'll now move on to roll call. So when I say your name, please say present. Senator Clark.
Aquí.
Mr. Dr. Gatsby. He's absent.
Rub.
Mr. Jacobs is present. Mr. Moroni is voting via proxy. Mr. Reinhardt.
Present.
Mr. Sawyer is absent. He's on leave for 24 hours. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele is present. Mr. Trafford. Mr. Trafford is absent. Mr. Turing.
Present.
Mr. Turing is present. Mr. Walsh.
Present.
Mr. Walsh is present. And with that, we have quorum. All right. So the agenda for tonight will be as follows. Item 1 is the S1618 Penal Soldier Amendment presented by Senator Reinhardt. Item 2 is S1619, the Courts for Americans Act, presented by Senator Reinhardt. Item 3 is S1620, the Commerce Code, presented by Senator Reinhardt. Item 4 is S1621, Diplomatic Immunity Act 2017, presented by Senator Gatsby. Item 5 is HR 1604, Your Freedom Act, presented by CLTN. Item 6 is HR 1605, Senate Confirmations Act, presented by CLTN. Item 7 is HR 1606, the Code of Conduct Act, presented by CLTN. Item 8 is S1624, the Active Act, presented by Senator Walsh. Item 9 is S.J.Res 1604, Amendment 25 to the Constitution of the United States, presented by Senator Senator Jacobs. Item 10 is T1602, the Treaty of Honolulu, presented by President Russo. And the last item on the agenda, item 11, is X1625, MPD Chief Foundation Act, presented by Senator Gatsby. Are there any motions to amend the agenda? Are there any votes to proceed to a vote on the agenda?
I motion to proceed.
I second.
Okay. You move on to passage of the agenda. Senator Clark.
Aye.
Senator Jacobs votes aye. Senator Reinhardt. Senator,
Affirmative. Yes.
Senator Steele. Senator Walsh.
Aye.
I'm sorry, and Senator Turing.
Aye.
All right, there was 6 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 abstentions. The agenda passes. Floor is open for opening remarks.
Motion to proceed.
I second.
I second.
All right, we'll proceed to item 1 on the agenda, S1618, the Penal Soldier Amendment. The floor is open for debate.
Motion to proceed.
I second.
Was there a motion to proceed?
There was.
Yes, there was. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Okay. Move on to a vote. Senator Clark.
Yay.
Was that a nay or an aye?
Yay.
Yay, okay. Senator Jacobs votes aye. Senator Moroni votes aye via proxy. Senator Reinhardt. Senator Reinhardt votes aye. Senator Steele. Senator Steele votes aye. Senator Turing.
I vote aye.
Senator Turing votes aye, and Senator Walsh.
Aye.
All right. With 7 in the affirmative, 0 against, and 0 abstentions, the item passes. And for further notice, make sure to put all votes in the chat in game. Okay. I'll move on to item 2, S1619. The floor is open for debate.
I request.
You are recognized.
This was the same bill that was discussed and deliberated in the last session. It was reintroduced, removing the portion about USCIS v. Guy Berner, which portions of that was rolled back. Just kind of overview what was discussed last session. Senator Reinhardt and I had a back and forth for about 15 minutes to discuss the legality of immigrants accessing our court system to appeal for their failed immigrant status. And some of the things I cited were a recent Supreme Court case in which the opinion was delivered by Chief Justice Hartson, which stated that in certain cases, immigrants do have, well actually, in all cases, immigrants do have due process and access to our court system, with the precedence of a court case deliberated in the 50s called Chu v. Colding, which stated that immigrants do have First and Fourth Amendment rights. I guess in our group, Fifth Amendment or something like that. But essentially, I disagree with this bill simply because I believe that if someone is a failed immigrant and they don't have the opportunity to, they don't have an opportunity to appeal that, and they just fail, I don't really see that as, I see that kind of as an injustice, as a sense. If the senator has an issue with the bill that he's repealing, I'd love to get in a call with him later on and discuss a possible replacement to the bill. But as it currently stands, I am against this, and I support, I encourage colleagues to vote in the negative. Since we had an extensive debate on this last session, I really don't want to have one today. Senator Reinhardt can respond, and then I'll motion to proceed, all that good stuff. So I yield.
Across the floor.
All right. And before I recognize anyone, I'd like to ask that whenever you speak, to please step up to the podium in game.
I forgot.
All right. All right. Thank you, Senator Reinhardt. You're recognized.
All right. So he brought up the fact that the immigrants within our country have a right to due process. And when my retort at the time, which he obviously failed to mention, was that I don't care what the Supreme Court says is legal or is not legal. It is not right. At one point, I believe, the Supreme Court wouldn't have considered two people in this room to be people legally. So I don't believe the Supreme Court is any object on any moral relevance. By giving them the right to due process, but not the right to vote or the right to anything else, stated, is partial rights, and as I stated in my opinion on this, it creates a subclass of American, and it is not. It's not okay, to put it simply. Within our world, we have people who are citizens of certain countries. Our citizens can access our courts. Can access their courts, and that's the way it should be. That keeps it simple, and that keeps it moral. Now, the senator actually misleading when he mentioned a real-life law, while he was noting that Jones v. Copa struck down all mention to real-life law there due to Article 1 not being able to that state that the only laws we recognize are those passed by our Congress, being that the majority of them were not passed by our Congress or the court that was established by our Congress. That is not a valid point or not an argument. Opportunity, or the valid opportunity for a citizen to reapply is to leave the group and press join group again, and they will re-enter the process. No extensive legal battle is necessary, and I believe the senator was being intellectually misleading, and I don't agree with any of his points. and he made reference to a replacement act. I believe the only replacement act is no act, and an amendment stated afterwards in order to bring the Supreme Court around. Because the only way to overwrite Supreme Court precedents is to write new law, and that's what I'm attempting to do here, but we can't do it as long as this act's in place. So I yield the floor and motion to proceed.
I second.
Mr. President, point of order.
There has been a second stage point of order.
It's these three people on the floor without proper access from the Senate.
All right.
Our approval.
Yes, let me fix that. I yield the chair to Senator Clark while I go fix that.
Okay, was there a second to the motion?
There was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are now proceed to a vote. Senator Clark votes abstain. Senator Jacobs.
Okay. I'm on my way back to the chamber.
Senator Jacob, what's your vote?
I vote aye, Mr. President. I mean, I vote nay, Mr. President.
Senator Reinhardt. Senator Reinhardt.
He votes aye, Chair.
Senator Steele. Senator Steele votes yeah. Senator Trafford vote aye via proxy. Senator Mathmiden. Senator Mathmiden votes abstain. Senator Walsh.
Nay.
My mic is up. Okay. With 3 ayes, 2 nays, 2 abstentions, the Courts for Americans Act is passed.
I think I take back the chair now. Alright. I'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, S1620, the Commerce Code presented by Senator Reinhardt. The floor is now before debate.
Motion to proceed.
I second.
Alright, move on to a vote. Senator Clark.
Aye.
Senator Jacobs votes aye. Senator Maroney votes aye via proxy. Senator Reinhardt. Senator Reinhardt votes aye. Senator Steele. Senator Steele votes aye. Senator Turing. Senator Turing votes aye. Senator Walsh.
Aye.
Senator Walsh votes aye. Was 7 in the affirmative, 0 opposed, and 0 abstentions. The item passes. We'll move on to item 4, S1621. Before we do that, I'd like to remind all senators to state their votes in the game.
All right. You keep saying that. Are we stating them both in verbally and in game, or like I'm confused.
Just in game.
Okay, so we don't vote verbally at all.
No verbally, just in game.
Okay.
Alright, good. Okay, the floor is open for debate.
I motion to proceed.
Second.
Alright. On to a vote. On item 4, Senator Clark. Senator Clark votes aye. Senator Jacobs. Senator Jacobs votes aye. Senator Moroni votes nay via proxy. Senator Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt, aye. Senator Steele. Mr. Steele, aye. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing, aye. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, aye. With 16 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, the item passes. Move on to item 5, HR 1604, presented by CLTN. The floor called. Is there a second for Mr. Clark's motion?
I second.
There is a second. Right. All in favor of reconsidering item 2 on the agenda. Oh! In the opinion of the chair,
There's a tie.
yeah, there is a tie.
So we need our VP to join.
Yes.
He's in the call.
Mr. Kane, what is your vote
This is
on the motion to reconsider item 2?
On its tallies.
Yeah, item 2 passed, and there was a motion to reconsider it.
The Vice President votes aye, and with that, we will reconsider item 2 as 1619.
I motion to proceed
so-
to a vote.
Seconded.
All right, we'll proceed to a vote on item 2. Senator Clark. Senator Clark, nay. Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, nay. Mr. Moroni votes aye via proxy. Mr. Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt, aye. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, aye. Mr. Walsh, Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing, aye. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, nay. With 4 votes in the affirmative, 3 opposed, and 0 abstentions, the item passes. We'll go back to item 5, HR 1604, presented by CLTN, and the floor is open for debate.
I motion to proceed.
Is there a second? Alright, there has been a second, and we will proceed to a vote. Mr. Clark? Mr. Clark, aye. Mr. Jacobs? Mr. Jacobs, aye. Mr. Moroni votes aye via proxy. Mr. Reinhardt? Mr. Reinhardt, aye. Mr. Steele? Mr. Steele was 6 in the affirmative, none opposed, 1 abstention. Is the stream still up?
Hold on, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just disconnected from the game. I meant to vote aye.
Okay.
I'm rejoining.
Is the stream still up?
Yeah, the stream's still up. I just disconnected from Roblox.
Alright, cool.
Yeah, but I vote aye on that bill, by the way.
Okay. Your vote has been changed to aye. Alright. We'll move on to item 6, HR 1605, the Senate Confirmations Act, presented by CLTN. Floor is open for debate. Senator Clark, you're recognized.
Okay. Thanks. Does it really matter how I speak?
Just speak
Okay.
verbally.
Okay, this piece of legislation was legally changed after passing the House of Representatives. Yes, it was something very possible, imbecile-like, though this act was improperly titled as HR 1601 instead of HR 1605. The author was notified of this mistake and changed it illegally. Instead of having the House drafting impeachment articles, I recommend that this chamber is denied this legislation in order for it to go back to the House of Representatives for it to be voted on again with the proper amendment from the author. I yield, Mr. President.
I request.
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
Why don't we just amend it here instead of failing it and sending it back to the House?
Well,
We'd have
can
to
I?
do reverse amendment.
It'd have to go back to the House regardless, and I understand that I'm not recognized, but at the same time, it also does a few things to the Army that would gently fuck it. So, and the majority of the military. The act is just poorly written, and it was changed after the fact in order to pass it through this chamber. So I'll be voting nay.
I'd like to remind the Senator from North Carolina to keep an orderly tone in his remarks. Thank you.
An orderly tone. English, please.
To refrain from profanity.
Like,
Gracias.
no fucking swearing? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, no swearing.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Walsh, you're still recognized.
But well, first off, I have a couple of questions about Rosie's point, because if there are issues with the bill that would have, negative impacts on the Army, we should discuss that, because I didn't notice that at first. But on the point of sending it back to the House, it would go back to the House regardless. It would make more sense for us to amend it now, then vote as amended, then send it to the House, rather than sending it to the House and then have to send it back to us. So if we want to amend the bill to change to HR 1506 or whatever the hell it's supposed to be, or 1605, I apologize, then we should do that there. But question for Senator Reinhardt: what were
Does the Senator yield? Does the Senator yield to a question?
Does that mean I'll allow a question, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
what were the what specific positions?
The fact that the original legislation just outlines the fact that anyone 07 or above, but at the same time, this also states that, for example, the chief of staff, the Force Com Commandant, or the Force Com Commandant General, the TECOM Commandant General, a bunch of unnecessary redundants from somebody who clearly doesn't know the armed forces in the slightest, wrote this act, and I was never consulted, and I've contacted the General Staff of the Army. None of them were consulted as well.
Okay.
Just in the authoring of this act, it was done simply out of arrogance.
All right. Well, simply out of that, I'll oppose the bill. But in terms of failing the bill, sending it to the House, and then coming it back just because of a name change doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, I will be opposed to this bill simply because of the fact that I agree with the fact that we have 07 and above, and I believe flag officers and stuff. That's kind of what we did previously, but this is kind of adding extra things that we don't really need to go through the Senate for. And with that, I'll be opposing the bill, and I yield.
The floor is still open.
Request the floor. I'll keep this very brief. The basic thing is also that it outlines commands that can't be removed or added because it's in congressional legislation, and therefore military and Department of Defense regulation cannot intrude on it. So it not only puts it wasn't only made in arrogance for the military, it was also done so legally. It makes it a mess in order to change anything, because it would have to go through both chambers of Congress, which, as we all are aware, takes time. And sometimes, especially when it comes to the military, sooner is better. So I yield once again.
Okay.
I request very shortly, because I was
Mr. Walsh recognized.
I was just given new information. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but I'm being told that it's from Colton, so I mean, it's just, take it with a grain of salt. It says, telling me that the Senate Confirmations Act that is currently in effect, is pretty much the exact same in terms of who is confirmed and who isn't confirmed, and that the only changes... I'm not sure what the changes made were. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it says, in the current one, it says Commanding General of the Army Forces Command, Commanding General of the Army Training and Doctrine Command, and stuff like that. So, from what I'm being told, this is the same thing that we have had in the past. I'm trying to figure out what the difference is. Could we potentially like bring the author in, because I'm not understanding why this was proposed in the first place, because I don't see what the difference is.
Can I have a question, Mr. Walsh, please?
Sure.
Is anyone in this chamber actually in favor of this legislation? Because I see some people that are leaning nay, and a lot of people that are firmly nay. So, I mean, we could just motion to proceed. He could rewrite it and consult us on our private time like he's supposed to, and explain it to us then, instead of just handing us a steaming pile of trash during a session, with all respect.
Okay.
If you make a motion to proceed, I'd second it, Senator.
I honestly don't see a need for us to pass this bill, so I motion to proceed.
I second.
Alright, we'll move on to a vote. Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark. Nay. Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs. Nay. Mr. Maroney votes aye via proxy. Mr. Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt. Nay. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele. Nay. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing. Nay. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh. Nay. With 1 vote in the affirmative, 6 opposed, and 0 abstentions, the item fails. Move on to item 7, HR 1606, the Code of Conduct Act. The floor is open for debate.
I request the floor.
Mr. Reinhardt, you recognized.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about this. We forgot about this last time, didn't we? I noticed that it just mandates the creation of a code of conduct. I'm curious on how useful that is, unless we actually mandate a code of conduct, given the judicial doesn't believe they need one themselves. Either we should mandate one, or let them go about it their own way, because otherwise it will most likely be completely half-assed, if I'm aware of this group. So I urge my colleagues to vote in the negative until a proper act is drafted that will either mandate a code of conduct for our judiciary, or comes about it themselves and drafts their own. I believe just twisting an arm won't do a thing. So I yield and I motion to proceed.
I second.
Or proceed to a vote. Senator Clark. Mr. Clark. Nay. Senator Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs. Abstain. Senator Maroney votes aye via proxy. Senator Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt. Nay. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele. Nay. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing, nay. And Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, abstain. With 1 vote in the affirmative, 2 opposed, and 2 abstentions, the item fails. Move on to item 8, S1624, the Active Act, presented by Senator Walsh. The floor is open for debate.
I request.
Mr. Walsh, recognized.
Bear with me for a moment. It's a slightly long kind of introduction of this bill. It's not too bad though. The Active Act initially I introduced because there was an unnecessary and there was a unilateral action that was taken by our founder. While I agree with everything that was in the founder ruling, and all the provisions, I didn't agree with the means in which it was enacted. Our country, via our Constitution, has a system of checks and balances which shouldn't be ignored in the face of convenience. Here I stand with a bill that has obtained a majority of our Congress's support, which could have all taken place without a ruling. And in addition, the bill that I propose is much more specific and enforceable than the ruling that was written. Can you hear me?
I don't know. Just you're still
Unilateral decision.
Okay. Okay, that was very toward the beginning of it. On the map in a minute. The Active Act I proposed was initially introduced because of unnecessary actions taken by our founder. While I agree with the contents of this bill and all the provisions that entailed with it, I didn't agree with the means in which it was enacted. The Constitution sets in place a system of checks and balances which shouldn't be ignored in the face of convenience. And here I stand with a bill that has obtained a majority of our Congress's support, which could have all taken place without any ruling being considered or put into place. And in addition, the bill I propose is more specific and enforceable than the ruling written by our founder. On to the contents of the bill and how it'll impact our country. What I've proposed requires certain actions and decisions taken by our government to occur in-game. For a very long time, we've been shifting away from Roblox and rendering many of our maps inactive and using Discord for more official business. And it's my firm belief that if this bill passes and is signed, it'll yield more activity and allow us to prosper as a country. So I encourage everyone to vote in the affirmative, and I yield.
all right.
Motion to proceed.
I second.
Okay. We'll proceed to a vote on item 8. Senator Clark. Mr. Clark, aye. Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, aye. Mr. Maroney votes aye via proxy. Mr. Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt, aye. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, aye. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing. He abstains. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, aye. With 6 votes in the affirmative, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention, the item passes.
I motion to mark that Senator Gatsby is present.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All right. You will now be marked as present. Well, partial. All right. Senator Gatsby. Is Senator Gatsby in the call?
Yes.
All right. So please take your seat, and then, yeah, okay. So we'll move on to item 9. S.J.Res 1604, Amendment 25 to the Constitution of the United States, presented by myself, and the floor is open for debate.
I motion to proceed to a vote.
Seconded.
All right, we'll move on to a vote, and just to note, because Senator Sawyer took a leave of absence today, we need 6 votes for this piece of legislation to pass. Mr. Gatsby, aye. Mr. Steele, Mr. Steele, Mr. Steele, aye. Mr. Turing, Mr. Turing abstains. Mr. Walsh, Mr. Walsh aye. I yield the chair to Senator Steele, and I motion to move this piece of legislation to the wall for a wall vote.
I second.
Okay, I take the chair back from Senator Steele. Alright, so that will move to a wall vote after this session. So move on to item 10, T-1602, the Treaty of Honolulu, presented by President Russo.
Dude.
If that was
there a motion to proceed?
Second.
Alright. On to a vote. Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, aye. Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, aye. Mr. Maroney votes aye via proxy. Mr. Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt, aye. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, aye. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing, aye. And Mr. Walsh. Aye. And Mr. Gaspy. Aye. With 8 votes in the affirmative, 0 against, and 1 abstention, the item passes. We'll move on to item 11, S1625, MPD Chief Nomination Act, presented by Senator Gatsby.
Motion.
I request the floor.
Mr. Gatsby recognized.
I'd like to just pose a question to the chair. As I came in late, do I have to type?
You have to type your votes in game, and when you speak, go up to the podium. Is that it?
Motion to proceed.
I second.
I believe he's still recognized.
Executive branch books. However, in the president does put up back though. That's how we've been running. And I would like for the nominee to be vetted before this body, like every other nominee, so that the MPD can be allowed to flourish and we can prevent somebody who this body disagrees with from being put in power.
Alright, it's a motion to force... Oh, he's already yielding, okay. Move on. The floor is open for debate.
Seconded.
Second.
Okay, we'll move on to a vote. Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark abstains. Mr. Gatsby. Mr. Gatsby, aye. Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, aye. Mr. Maroney abstains via proxy. Mr. Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt, aye. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, aye. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing, aye. Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, aye. With 6 votes in the affirmative, 0 against, 2 abstentions, the item passes. Senator Clark changed his vote to aye. Okay. With that, I yield the chair to Senator Walsh.
I'd like to request the floor.
You have the floor.
The Senate rules state after 3 motions, a senator must be expelled. Mr. Turner has either submitted proxy votes or missed entirely entirely 3 sessions. I motion to expel the senator.
Which senator? I didn't see that.
Senator, not Turner. Sorry, what's his name?
Trafford?
Trafford. There we go. Sorry, names. Yes, Senator Trafford.
I think, yeah, there was a second. So I suppose now should we move this to a wall vote, or should we just do a vote here?
I motion. No, it says. Does it say that we need to have it on a wall? Because I would not like it on the wall. I'd like it down here.
I don't believe the standing rules state that unless anyone else knows for a fact.
I motion to conduct a vote on the wall.
I motion for if a vote is to be conducted on the wall, it be voted that we vote to conduct it on the wall.
Do you guys want me to check the standing rules real quick, and we can kind of come back to this issue and hold on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But go ahead. But I don't believe that this should be like a 4-hour issue. The man hasn't done anything in the Senate, so.
Let me check a.
Yeah. And he's become a detriment on the fact that we can't actually gain quorum with the evidence that we had to move the session back 3 hours today. Which you can't blame one person, but you definitely can't say he's helped the problem. So
this will be, I think this would be in the Constitution. Let me go see what it specifies. I think the Constitution should say, it'll either say the majority of the Senate, or I don't know. Let me go take a look. Expel. Okay. It says each chamber shall determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3 of the full body, expel a member. So I think there does need to be a wall vote on this matter, just simply because of the language of the Constitution stating it says concurrence of 2/3 of the full body. So if you want, you can motion.
I believe that's a question for the Supreme Court. I motion to put that move into the wall to a vote. However,
you motion.
I second the motion.
To a wall vote. Okay.
Yes.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. It's saying game.
Oh yeah. This is to move it to a wall vote. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the opinion of the chair. Okay, okay. You guys. Okay, let me specify because you guys changed your vote like 20 times. This is a vote to move it to the wall in concurrence with the Constitution, because it states that you need 2/3 of the full body. So there was a motion to. This is not a motion to expel. This is a motion to move the expulsion to a wall vote. So there was a motion to move this vote to a wall vote. And then it was seconded. The expulsion of Senator Ian Trafford is what was moved to the wall, in concurrence with what the Constitution states, which states 2/3 of the full body. So I mean, if we pass it here, there's going to be a Supreme Court ruling on this, I assume, and if we pass it on the wall, there won't be any issue. So I mean, okay. So
might as well give the Supreme Court something to do, I assume. So.
All right.
If I request the floor.
Senator Leo, you have the floor.
Senator Trafford has been on leave for the majority of his
Senator Reinhardt is not recognized. Senator Leo is not recognized.
Just to clear it up, being that we have 7 senators here, and because Senator Sawyer is on leave, we have enough people here, if everyone here votes in the affirmative, to pass an expulsion of Senator Trafford.
Okay, so 2/3 of 9 is obviously 6, so this needs 6 votes to pass. So I guess we don't have to do a wall vote, but you would need 6 votes from the chamber currently here to pass it.
There we go. That sounds good.
So that's what we'll do. All right. So does anyone motion to proceed to vote on the expulsion?
I motion to proceed.
Second.
There's a second. All right. Let me call the roll. Oh shit! I don't even have the. Darn. I don't even have the agenda up. Hold on. I'll just look on the. All right, Senator Clark. Your vote on the expulsion. All right. You see, aye is 1. Nay. Okay. Senator Gatsby. Your vote. Abstain. All right. Senator Jacobs. Abstain. Alright. Senator Reinhardt. Or Mr. Reinhardt, I guess is what we're supposed to say. Mr. Reinhardt, aye. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele. Abstain. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing, aye. And Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, abstain. With 3 votes in the affirmative, none in the negative, and 4 abstentions, this has not reached 2/3 of the full body. And
I request the floor, Mr. President.
Senator Reinhardt, you have the floor.
I'm curious what particularly made the members so conflicted that they chose to abstain. Do they have a personal investment with the senator that they need to disclose with the chamber? Do they believe themselves conflicted on the issue? I'm curious, would any senator that voted abstain yield to a question?
Also, to add, I'm pretty sure abstains would lower the quorum, or per se, lower. Okay.
If I could pose a question.
I asked a question. Would you yield to a question, Mr. Gatsby?
Since this is not the full body isn't present, so I mean, it's kind of.
Does it need 2/3 in the affirmative, or to be conducted with 2/3 of the body?
Hold on, let me. Okay.
No, but Walsh, here's the thing. Everyone who is not on leave is present except for the man we're expelling because of his poor attendance.
Okay.
I'm reclaiming my time as senator. Thank you.
Alright, Maxine Waters, can we chill for a minute? I'm about to do a little...
I'm reclaiming my time, senator.
Hold on. Just
it's
1
my
second.
floor, Mr. Senator.
So there were 9 senators that are currently... And then 4 abstained. Yes, I agree that does lower the quorum. So that would bring it down to 5, so majority, yeah. Well, that makes sense now that I thought about it. Yes, so 4 abstained, which brings the quorum down to 5 members. And a majority of 5 is 3, which we had 3 in favor, meaning that the expulsion does indeed pass.
There you go.
I relinquish my time.
Alright, does anyone else request before we move on to adjournment? You motion to redo the vote. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Alright. We will now redo the vote. Damn, I thought we were almost done. Give me a second. Okay. Did someone leave the call? There's only 6 of us here.
Senator Clark.
Senator Clark. I need Senator Clark to rejoin the call.
Oh, he left it for the DNC debate.
Oh, that's going on now? Shit.
Okay.
I didn't know. Okay, well, let's go ahead and,
I motion to adjourn.
well, there was a motion to do a revote and it was seconded. Alright,
Yeah.
So, Senator Clark. So, someone have Senator Clark vote.
He voted yea.
Alright. Senator Gatsby.
Aye.
Senator Jacobs. Senator Jacobs votes aye. Mr. Reinhardt. Mr. Reinhardt? Oh, did you vote in game? Yep. I keep forgetting I have to change back and forth. Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele votes aye. Mr. Turing. Mr. Turing votes aye. Mr. Walsh votes aye. With 7 in favor, none against, and none abstaining, the expulsion passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Alright. We will now vote on adjournment. Senator Gatsby.
Aye.
Senator Jacobs.
Aye.
Senator Reinhardt. Senator Steele. Senator Turing, Senator Clark, and Senator Walsh votes aye. This session is now adjourned.